Time now for the press review with Sharon Gaffney. Good to see you, Sharon.
Hi, Delano.
You're starting out with the latest from Ukraine.
And specifically, Delano, a rare glimpse into a battlefield that's really transfixed the world. The New York Times has been speaking via video chat with some of the Ukrainian soldiers who are holed up in a sprawling steel mill in the besieged city of Mariupol under constant bombardment from the air and surrounded by Russian troops on the ground. They say their ammunition and supplies are running low and they're appealing directly to the US for help. Now, with just the light of a phone breaking the pitch black darkness of their underground bunker, the soldiers said they're determined to fight on, but they know that their only real hope at this point is that other Ukrainian troops will be able to come to their rescue.
We'll see how the story pans out. Now, turning to here in France, there's a high-profile debate set to take place.
Yes, and for L'Opinion, it's pistols at dawn, or rather specifically at 9 p.m. this evening. The paper says Marine Le Pen is facing into the biggest debate of her life, preparing for her duel with Macron. She'll be hoping for revenge, it says, 5 years after she was badly embarrassed by him in their last debate. And if you can see it there, her far-right rival, Eric Zemmour, he's dressed up as an undertaker, measuring Le Pen for a coffin, clearly hoping that tonight will result in her political death. It's quite dark, even as he's wishing her good luck.
We'll see. She's had 5 years to prepare for this duel.
Libération, meanwhile, is providing some light relief for the 16 million viewers who are expected to tune in later, Delano. It's published a bingo game ahead of the big event. Among the one-liners to look out for from Marine Le Pen: you're the candidate of globalisation, I'm the candidate for the nation, or perhaps I've evolved, I've changed, I've learned. Meanwhile, for Macron, get your pens at the ready for when he tells Le Pen she's a climate change sceptic and part of a clan that's been defending the same ideas for 8 presidential elections.
And we'll see how it pans out tonight. Turning our attention now to a ruling by a judge over in Florida that instantly reshaped travel for millions of Americans.
Yes, passengers hooted, hollered and twirled their freshly ditched masks in the air with giddy delight, says the Washington Post, and that was as pilots announced mid-flight that face coverings would no longer be mandatory on board after a judge in Florida struck down the federal mask mandate in the US. Now, according to the paper, the squeals of unbridled delight illustrated how childish and selfish people had become and were a reminder of how absorbed they were by their own individual circumstances. Meanwhile, for the more conservative Wall Street Journal, the reaction of passengers reflects the joy of being liberated from 2 years of COVID restrictions that were often imposed, it says, for political reasons. The paper says it's not quite the end of prohibition, but asks if there's ever been a judicial ruling that's prompted so much rejoicing in the US.
Speaking of someone who's not rejoicing, the British Prime Minister Boris Johnson, who was apologising.
Sorry, not sorry, says the Klingon PM. On the front page of Scotland's Daily Star, Boris Johnson, it says, is in a spock of bother as he again brushes off calls for his resignation ahead of a big no confidence vote later. The paper says that vote isn't necessary as the tabloid itself can provide the required response to claims that he misled Parliament. Spoiler alert, Boris is a big fibber, it says. Meanwhile, for Political Cartoon, it's business as usual for the Prime Minister. He's heading back to the office with his most faithful deputies in tow, a glass of wine guiding the bandwagon as it rolls on. And finally, on that story, you can see Johnson in Parliament in this cartoon from Peter Brooks. The under fire Prime Minister using the Ukrainian president as a human shield to detract from criticism of his role in the partygate scandal.
They used to call him Teflon Trump, but it seems like it's Teflon Johnson as well. You're leaving us with some good news for the brokenhearted.
Can we deliberately fall out of love, Delano? That is the big question for the New York Times. And the answer, it says, is yes. Some scientists say there is hope for the brokenhearted because the process of falling in and out of love, it's controlled seemingly by the same area of the brain associated with hunger and thirst, making it a drive rather than an emotion. So how do you do it, Delano? It's a 1-2 punch, say the experts. Think negative thoughts about your former loved one. And secondly, try to distract yourself with something or perhaps someone new.
Wow. Thank you very much for that, Sharon. Sharon Gaffney there with the press review. And you can check out other editions of the press review on our website, france24.com.